Hello and welcome to another episode of Community Dissection. In this episode, we are going to be dissecting the Etsy community. I'm really excited. They host their community on Khoros, and so we're going to show you what it looks like, the experience to join it, and I have two fabulous experts with me today that I'm very excited to have share their insights. We have Rosie Sherry from Rosieland. Rosie, you want to say hi?
Hello.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. It's very late for Rosie, so we're really thankful to have her on. And Tim McDonald is back. So Tim, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. And it's just so great. I was just telling Rosie, it's the first time I've ever gotten to see her face and communicate in as close as real life as we can, even though we've been connected for years and years online.
For those of you who don't know, Rosie is a bit of an icon in the community world. So we're very, very excited to have her on. And Tim, y'all are both superstars. So all right, here we go. So today we're going to dive into Etsy. And right away, what I noticed about the Etsy community is they make it really easy to find the community. But before I share my screen, I found out about the Etsy community actually through my friend Danielle Neville, or I think that's how you pronounce her last name. So Danielle was Etsy's 12th employee. She grew, educated, and supported the Etsy community, which grew from a few thousand members to over a few million, just a few million over the course of 5 years. So I know Danielle put a lot of heart and soul into this community. And I know that it has changed a lot from when she first started it, but I'm really excited to kind of peel back the layers and see what it looks like today. So first of all, finding the community was really, really easy, like I said, and I'm gonna share my screen here. So look at this beautiful, simple, cohesive space. So this community is hosted on Khoros, and let me see here. What I like is that it makes it the three pillars of community that I consider: events, conversation, and content, are all really accessible right here on the front page.
Can I ask you a question before we go too much further,
yeah,
Bri?
Yeah, go for it.
You're saying it's easy to find, but how did you get there from where you're at?
Yes, great question. So I literally just Googled Etsy community. So I'll show the process here. And just, so what has been surprising to me about, we have help Etsy community. So yeah, this is the one that we're on right now, the community home. And it looks like, I guess they also do have they call their help center a community as well, online community. And then there's a sellers support community on Facebook and a community on Instagram. So maybe quite a few places where you can find community. We're going to be, for the purposes of this video, diving into this platform where they host, it seems like, the majority of their community programming. Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, well, a little bit. I was kind of thinking, like, if I'm just on their website, how would I find it,
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because when I went to the website, that's what I went to look for. I literally just went to the website and I looked for the community, and I actually found it quite hard to find. And I found it in the footer, and it's called forums. Normally I would look for the word community, so it took me a bit longer to actually find it.
Oh, that's a great call out. Yeah, and I'm curious here. So I actually saw, doing the research for this, there was a YouTube video of a maker on Etsy who created a video tutorial about the community, like welcoming people and showing like different resources that Etsy has for their makers. And they actually mentioned, they were like, it's just go to the format and then you can go to teams, or there was something else that they had them go somewhere else. So you're right, this footer does not. Okay, so forums is there. affiliate and creators. So I'm curious too how affiliate and creators, if they overlap with this broader community or if they have separate programs. Which, I mean, it definitely seems like they have separate programs, but if the programs overlap in this space or if they have their own platform and area where they interact. And then finally, teams. Yes, so this teams is like their small group segments of their community. So you can start a team for people who do like sell crocheted items. But what's interesting, okay, well, let's go back here. So I guess that's a great call out. Easy to Google, not easy to find on the actual Etsy website. I'm curious how they push the community in the onboarding experience for their makers, if they invite them into the community when you join Etsy as a maker or seller, because seems like a phenomenal resource for them, but I wonder where they're being prompted to join it.
Yeah, that's kind of what prompted the question from me, and I'm sure from Rosie too.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to share, so on the content side, this seller handbook seems to be like kind of an all-encompassing place where they host blog posts or articles that all support sellers, how we're helping Etsy sellers grow in 2023. So this seemed like a pretty awesome resource for sellers to learn how to sell on Etsy and how to build their businesses. Let's see. Etsy Success podcast. Very cool. See where that takes us. So I personally was like pretty impressed with the like robust content that is directly here in the community. A lot of like communities, when they have content like this, they're usually hosting it somewhere else, and it's kind of hard to find where to get those actual resources. So I was pleased to see, and oh, this is cool, seller stories. Oh, this doesn't look like, this is just the seller handbook. Oh, okay, so that link doesn't go where it's supposed to. Oh wait, seller stories is here. Cool. I think this is awesome that they have this many kind of testimonials and case studies. Yeah, Tim?
I guess my question would be is what's unique about this? Because I always think that community needs some form of exclusivity. And so when you're here, this looks like something that anybody can get to, as opposed to like a community where you're getting exclusive access to stuff that not everybody else gets.
Right, right. Which is a little bit of the limitation of my formatting here on this video series, because I'm not a seller on Etsy. I can't confirm or deny if their experience is going to be different. Actually, you know what? I was a seller back in the day on Etsy. I wonder if I wonder if they kept my account. I sold like these little like handmade headbands in college. Let's see here. Yeah, that's a really great point. Okay, I wanted to.
It certainly makes me feel like I don't get access to it because I'm not a seller. Because like it says, like on the homepage, it says, "Welcome to Etsy's community space. Etsy sellers use these community spaces to grow their businesses." So whether, you know, does that mean that I get access? That kind of says that I don't, but I don't know how true that is. I can start a discussion. I signed in as just, I'm not a seller, but I signed in with my Etsy account. And
okay.
I can start a discussion, so it doesn't seem like technically exclusive.
Yes.
It's not restricted.
And that tends to be the case for these much bigger communities where you have they're pretty open with the exception that you just have to like create a profile. Has been my experience. Until you get to like deeper levels of the community programming, like creators or affiliates, usually then you have to go through the application process. And I'm always trying to hack my way into those community spaces to be able to see what their programming is like. I need to get better at that. Okay, I'm just making sure. I thought I was logged in here, but I'm not. So I'm just logging into my Etsy account to confirm what you're saying and see if I can show it. Oh yeah, well, there's a profile picture from the year 2010. You guys remember those like super heavy filters? That's what we're dealing with. Okay, so this didn't really change any of the interface here, but it did log me into my seller account. So shop manager, update favorites. But it looks all pretty similar. So let's just click around a little bit here. We've got a getting started section. So this seems more like I'm curious if they do format. The problem with these big content centers is they over time get really overwhelming with where to start, and it's really unclear like the user journey and how to journey through the content. So usually what you'll see is like it might start out this way, but then the company will put it in more of a course format. So you can repurpose the same content, but put it in like a course so that people are going through it sequentially, which looks like a little bit what they try to do with getting started. Like they're trying to segment out, these are the things that you should definitely read if you're just starting out, but this is a lot of content. Like just getting started has 3 whole pages. So if I were to make any recommendations on this, I would say like, if there was like a really simple getting started course, or different formats, simpler and smaller and bite-sized, because this still feels like quite a bit of content if you're just trying to get started.
Or even grouping them by like, because I'm seeing a lot of stuff in here, like, you know, keywords, SEO, you know, I mean, maybe grouping some things together so that like if you're knowledgeable already about SEO and stuff, you don't need to worry about going there. But if you need to know more about like, how do you set up accounting or, you know, deal with taxes, that would be in one section. And you can kind of maybe do like, you know, 2 to 4 or 5 different categories where people could just go and explore where they need more learning.
Yep, I love that. I love that.
I think it's also easier to link to if someone has a question in the forum, then you can link to individual articles rather than a complete course. Like if people, you know, they just want to get their answers answered quickly, like articles can be great for that.
Yes, yep, a little bit more searchable.
Yeah,
courses are hard to find.
A tag cloud or something. A tag cloud or something might be handy.
Yeah, yep. Cool. All right. Anything else you guys want me to click on here in the handbook area?
Oh,
I
think so.
Can save articles. That's nice. If I save that, it goes over here. That's actually a nice little feature. Yeah. All right. Let's so one thing I noticed, so we got content. Let's dive into, we'll save conversation here last, but I did pop into their events over here. Let's see, let's X out some of these. And it looks like, I think these were happening. Oh, great. They added a bunch. Okay, cool. When I actually came in like 2 weeks ago, there was like 0 events in here. So that's really good news. That's really good news. I'm curious what format these take. Let's see how to learn. Are these, what is Etsy up?
These look very markety, like webinar
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know, like I do eBay, and they have eBay Open, which is their annual event for eBay sellers. So I'm not sure if Etsy Up might be something along those lines.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
It definitely appears that way. So like an annual conference. Very cool. It looks like this is all virtual and one day.
I wonder if there's any community-led things, because I noticed that this uses Bevy, which is supposed to kind of be, support, Bevy's made to support community-led meetups, I think. So I wonder, like a real talk, is that like a community-led thing? What was there? Do they have different types of it?
Out of all the events I'm seeing here, Rosie, the first one I got to was May 31st, building a standout brand. And it looks like it's with an actual Etsy shop owner instead of somebody from Meta or somebody, from within Etsy giving the talk.
Yeah, so more of the member-led events rather than just pushing from kind of HQ. In-depth discussion about creating. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm curious where Bevy is integrated here. Oh, okay.
It's a different subdomain, and you can see in the footer, right? So it's again, like I think like community tools, something that I rant on about, but it's like these are separate subdomains, separate tools. I suspect it would be hard to integrate all the data between them and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm like curious about this seasonal workshops situation. Okay, nothing there right now. Yeah, interesting. It definitely seems like there's a mix of, I mean, honestly, like some of this stuff sounds super basic, but I really have dissected quite a few communities that don't have any events, let alone like, even if the event is like brand led, like, or they might have like a brand led event that's like hosted by the admin, but then, and then the kind of the step beyond that is these member led events. So I'm pretty impressed to see like both these like HQ sponsored events and the, what seems like a conference coming up, as well as these like member led events. That to me is like pretty awesome. And a workshop here too, tips and strategies. Owner of paper good Etsy shop. So yeah, workshops being hosted. There's like the Q&A with members and then a workshop with a member. So I think that's pretty robust for what I've seen from community events for companies. Let's see here. Okay, so I wanted to come here into the community and just dive into the profile here a little bit. So what I like, and this is all like based on the capability of Khoros, but I liked, oh no, what I didn't like was this. This seems pretty, just from the UX perspective, it doesn't really tell me anything about like who this person is or how they're engaging with the community. So I don't know if it's like possible to remove this latest activity in Khoros, but I would love to see the like, I like the little, you can get a sense for like how active someone is, which is helpful as a community manager, but as another member in the community, it doesn't tell me anything about like, why would I want to connect with this person? Or if you're trying to foster those member to member connections in your community, I don't think that the profile is like lending itself, the profile structure is not lending itself for me to be like, oh, let me reach out to them because they might have insights about this, or they're asking questions about this and I can help with that.
When I do think that there's an opportunity here, I know it says Etsy staff, but like if you're staff, I think it should be a little bit more explicit in like what your role is within the staff. And then if you're a store owner, maybe putting that in, just to make sure that they know. I know everybody, it's kind of like eBay employees all have their own eBay stores, but I guess all Etsy employees probably have their own Etsy shops. And so, everybody's going to have a shop name, but making it a clear distinction between who's staff and who's an actual seller on there.
Yep. I think that's really great. Oops. Really great call out.
I also noticed that specific profile hadn't given any likes to any members. And yeah, that just doesn't go down well with me.
And you know, as you're saying that, Rosie, I was thinking when Bri was talking, I'm like, this is the same thing. And if I'm looking at this as like, I'm not this person, right? What kind of cares do I have that she got likes on her post? You know? I mean, what difference does that make to me? I want to know if she commented on something. I want to know if she liked something, but I don't care if other people were liking her stuff. Because that's all she's got. She's got 500 of those, 0 likes given, and only what, like 43 posts or something like that, or 57 or whatever it was. So it's kind of like, you know, this activity feed is like not really doing anything for me.
Yeah. Yep. Which I don't know if we can confront Etsy on that. That might be more of a Khoros critique. But I agree. It's not, what's the purpose of the user profile? And I don't think it's moving me as a member in any positive direction, helping me solve any problems. Oh, this podcast now opened up, Etsy Success Podcast. Very cool. I'm curious how this, if this is all led by Etsy or if they're like bringing in community members here. It seems pretty instructional. Holiday trends, shop critiques.
Guessing, probably is hosted by Etsy. They might bring in a couple sellers, you know, as part of it, just based upon what my experience is with, you know, like I said, with eBay, and then also seeing what they've done with the events. I'm guessing it's kind of a mix there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one thing that I'm kind of noticing, and I know we kind of jumped on this when we were at the events, but they seem to have like, you know, why wouldn't you try and have your, you know, podcast be embedded on your community site instead of directing you to Spotify? And, you know, kind of like how the events will drive you to Bevy, you know, instead of staying on, you know, the community site, you know. So it's like, you know, I feel like I don't have a home here as a community. I feel like I'm being pulled in a bunch of different directions depending on what I click on.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. Follow Etsy Success. So now that we're kind of breaking it open a little bit, I feel like there's Etsy Success seems like a learning, like customer success initiative or customer success department, which to me just needs its own full call out of like learn as an Etsy seller, like learn best practices or just like learning. And I think it is confusing. Like the handbook seems to be, I thought the handbook was that, but then when you click into that and you kind of click around, you realize like, oh, there's actually all of these other like success initiatives, tools, like the podcast isn't even here. Like, I don't even know where I would find the podcast necessarily. So I feel like it could be restructured in a way that just has an overarching umbrella of like learn like more about how to be successful on Etsy. And that includes the handbook, that includes like these other initiatives, but making it a little bit more centralized. Let's see here. Okay. We arrive at forums. So this is, I wanted to do this last. So here you can search the forum for the different questions in the community. It does feel like a lot of information on this page from a UX perspective. I don't quite know. So what I've appreciated about some other communities that we've dissected is they'll have like no more than 3 buttons here to kind of that immediately speak to like why I would come to this page. So I don't know what it means to join a team. Like, what does joining a team do for me as a seller? If you said like find sellers like you and then join the team, that's different to me than like using this kind of internal language. Like, I don't know what a team necessarily means, or like, what does our community policies, why would I actually want to read that? If you, maybe the call to action being like, read about how to engage in this community, or how to get involved in this community, or how, like, what's expected of you. Again, like, and the same thing with browsing the forums. Like, why would I browse the forums saying like get so, and they do kind of go into that in this like subtext, but I would just like I would swap that. I would make the main call to action like the thing that's solving the solution to your problem, rather than having it like direct them to the like channel. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that?
I think I get what you're saying. And, you know, the biggest thing that like is jumping out at me is, why do you even need those down there if you got the search right above it? You know, like I just type in what I'm looking for and then find what I need, instead of like figuring out, do I got to go to the forums? Do I need to join a team? Do I need to read the community policies? It's like, I can just type in search and probably find what I need a lot quicker. So
I'm curious, because I'd be like, okay, there a meetup happening near me, but that would probably only, oh, okay, here's somebody who's mentioned it. Curious. Back in 2012. Okay.
Well, I clicked on the Etsy teams, and then it just takes you to some content, and it doesn't really tell you what Etsy teams are. And it's just like, it feels like more seller events, more content, and it just doesn't help me.
Yes.
So there's some posts below it which are for Etsy teams. It's just a bit like, yeah, I don't know, what is it? There's a post with almost 10,000 comments. Like, oh my god. Who's gonna read through 10,000 comments? It's just like, what the heck is that?
you know, it would almost be nice if like when you clicked on there, you I don't know the right order on this, but like when we were back looking at the, you know, the what were they calling it? The oh geez, I need to go back on my screen now. The policies, right? The community policies. It's like, you know, maybe you need a little instruction on what Teams is, you know, before you click in there. And then it gives you an overview and like how to navigate it, what to expect, what, you know, what the standards and you know, and structure is of the community, so that before you just start poking around, you have an idea of what's expected of you, what you need to do, how to find things, etc.
So good. Yeah, I completely second that, Tim, and Rosie for calling out the confusion, and Tim, I like the advice of even on the welcome page. I feel like that could be super helpful to have like just a welcome video that's like, hey, here is where you have arrived, what it is, and where to find, just a quick little tour of like where to find what you need. And I'd be curious for the Etsy community team to understand. I'd be curious to hear from them, like, what are the 3 main reasons why someone would come into the community? Like, what are they looking for? And do you have a sense for what that answer is, and guiding them right here on the first page, let alone then like helping them access these. So it gets even more confusing to me personally, because we have Etsy teams. This page, I think, is in reverse. These featured blog posts just don't say anything about teams. You have to scroll down here, like you mentioned, Rosie, to find what appears to be the actual Etsy teams, which I was under the impression that these are like just segmented. Okay, but this is like, these teams are so confusing. Like, how is the crazy advertisers team? What is that? What do these mean? Is this like, I thought from the one video that I saw, the seller describing this, that it was like based on like your niche of what you are selling, you can find a team. It's like thrifty vintage team. But now I'm seeing Etsy success in here, which to me is pretty confusing, because Etsy success seems like their customer success department. So did they just like carve out a little segment of the community for all of their posts?
When I clicked on one of them, I couldn't access it. So maybe you can access it because you're a seller and they've somehow integrated that. So that's one interesting potential
Also,
point. But
what is
maybe
this?
everyone on that team has had some success. I don't know.
This is
If it's
Oh, and
so.
only
it
the
looks,
success.
yeah, like I just clicked into the thrifty seller one or the
Mhm.
thrifty vintage team, and it's a closed group, so I need to request to join.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Even
cool.
though I'm logged into my Etsy account, but I can't see anything there. They do give an overview of it, but not, and how many members are in there, who it's owned by. There's 3 different owners, when it was created, but they don't like let you see any of the activity that's going on. And
Okay.
when I did a search for looking at teams, because you can search teams by location or categories, and I did it by location and just put in mine in Tampa, Florida, and there was nothing. You know, so I don't know what the proximity is on that. You know, like if I just put you know, if I just put Florida and didn't put Tampa as a city in, if something would come up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually not where the search teams, but you can go into the location and do the drop down button,
Got
and
it.
then instead of global,
Location-based.
do location based.
Got it. Okay. Oh, interesting. Just pick.
So yeah, there are 4 groups that are Florida, but one's for all members on Etsy. So I
Okay.
think 2
Okay.
are actually dedicated towards Florida.
Interesting. Okay. And in those, actually, do you want to just share your screen there, Tim? And I'll
yeah.
give you access. Because I'm curious, within that group, just since you found it already, how what the
Just make sure I'm
conversation and
sharing the
engagement
right
looks like.
screen here.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Now I put you on the spot.
I think I got the right one here. So, but are you seeing this now?
Yes.
So like when I just went to location, and then I did location based instead of global, and then United States, and then Florida, and hit apply, and then it gives me the filters there, and then these are the 4 groups that come up. But you can see Southwest Florida and Central Florida makers. These are 2 that are specific to Florida. This one and this one look like they're just general to everybody.
Huh.
I might
When
be
you
wrong here if I go to this one. Let me just click on the AHA holistic one. Maybe it's not letting me. That's weird.
Oh, maybe it's just a flag.
Yeah, that's really strange. It's not even coming up now. Oh, there it is. It was just taking a while. So Central Florida makers. So this one, I guess, is, I can see, like I was telling you before, I was clicking on one. I couldn't see anything because it was a lock group. This is letting me see some activity, but I'm still not joined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Yeah, so there must be some different settings there. I'm curious how
Yeah,
you
I
would.
guess. Yeah.
How you
Oh,
would.
I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm just curious how you would like create a team. And this seems like these kind of segmented small groups to me scream a really amazing opportunity for like leaders within the community to rise up, right? So if you have someone who's like, man, we don't have like a Florida chapter of Etsy sellers, like we need a team for that. It looks like this is a great avenue for that. But when I click in here, it's like these different, and these are recent posts too at the top, at least. Somebody posted 2 weeks ago, but there's no responses, no like, hey, welcome. Like if there, I'd almost look for like, is there a team leader who, you know, owns this space and can kind of be the welcome committee, the like guide for, like I would add a little bit more ownership to each of these teams rather than kind of the free for all, because this seems like the place where you would come like more connected to a small group. But if the ball is dropped here, it feels like hard to come back to the big group experience. If you can't get connected here, I feel like the odds of you getting connected in a bigger group experience are pretty low.
Well, yeah, because when you go to no replies yet, it brings up everything. And if I'm going to a team and wanting to get questions or advice from other people in my area, and nobody's actually responding, including the people who form these teams, it's like I'm talking to a ghost town, right? Like nobody's there. I might as well just be by
Yes.
myself.
Yes. And that's what can often happen in these big communities is they start to segment into these smaller groups, which I think is very strategic, but it's like each of these small groups starts to become just like a million ghost towns. And so you really need, if you're going to start a team, you really need someone who has ownership and accountability over that group. And if it ever is like going to die, like remove it. If it becomes at whatever point it becomes a ghost town, don't keep it. You have just like, hundreds, if not thousands of these floating little like ghost town teams that I don't think are elevating the community.
The people or community teams generally are too scared to delete stuff, and they should feel more empowered to like close or archive things away. I think it's a real problem, to be honest with it. You can see it here. I can see how they got there and how it might have been great for a while and lots of engagement or excitement, but like longer term, if no one's engaging, it actually has a negative impact.
We need a seasonal, like a community pruning season, because like websites.
Spring is here. Spring
is here. It's time to prune. Oh, that'd be a fun series. Like pruning your community, because we always want to add more things. I think this happens on websites consistently. Like you always are willing to add more, but we never pause to understand and consider like what needs to be removed from here. And it's not out of like malice or anything, but I think you can just approach your community and say like, hey, we've noticed these spaces are less active. So unless you're the person who wants to like take the ownership to make this active, we're going to archive these spaces and start fresh over here.
When I think that's important too, like when because we never really found out how these teams are formed, right? So like, but if you were, let's say they made it easy to find a team and how you formed it, then to give you the guidelines of what's expected of you by creating that team so that you don't get like all upset with them, because this is the negative side, right? If you're not clear on expectations at the beginning, you're setting yourself up for failure in the long run. And so it's like, if you get somebody that sets up a team, they're not replying for whatever reason for 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 365 days. And then all of a sudden Etsy shuts it down. Now, all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, where did that go? And, so and they don't realize why it's happening. And so that's why I think this, kind of that onboarding flow is so important that I don't think we've really seen here. And I know we're not diving into the private side of the community, but, more the public facing side. But it does seem to me like there needs to be something that kind of, one, tells you what you're going to get out of this community that you're not going to get if you don't join, right? And secondly, it's, what are going to be the expectations if I do decide to join, and at different levels of joining, like forming my own team, creating my own event, doing all this. I mean, I'm not saying that we can do those things, but if we could, what are the expectations of me if I choose to take that next step and, rise in kind of a elevated position within the community as a thought leader, which is what a lot of people want to do in the community, right? I mean, a lot of people want to lurk and a lot of people want to come in and become a thought leader there. And so it's like, if you want either of those roles, what are you going to get? What's expected of you? And I think those two things, I mean, we can't necessarily know that they're not there, but I'm venturing a guess from what we've kind of previewed that they're not there and probably should be there.
Right. Yes. I think that's a brilliant call out. Like for me, if I was joining as a seller and I like see that event where they're like doing the workshop with that like really successful seller, the first thing that I'm asking is like, oh, like if I'm a super motivated member and I'm like, oh my gosh, she has like made it. Like, how do I do that? I should be able to see in the community some of the journey and steps that she took to kind of reach that level of like mastery and like recognition in the community. And that feels super unclear how to like kind of rise up as a leader in this community. Like it's not from just the little that we've explored, I haven't seen anything that would indicate transparency around that journey.
Get all people that have major success, and they're going to tell you how to do what they do at this success level instead of when they were where you're at when you were first starting.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Huge.
It's a classic of like in community, part of the value is you learn from people who are a few steps ahead of you rather than waiting until they're 100 steps. It's like you kind of learn together. And I think, yeah, I can see like how Etsy got to where it was or is, but I also think, like, I guess thinking about community these days, it's like, I don't know how they could ever integrate all that data usefully if they're using multiple different platforms. Well, they could, but it's just like, it's so hard to do that, right? But if I was building like Etsy from scratch today, I would be looking at how to build it into the actual platform, not have a separate platform, because then you can have all these useful bits of data and insights within the platform, and hopefully like something as big as Etsy would be able to afford to do that. But obviously that's easy to say in hindsight, and things are changing. But like when I think of the community industry, I'd love to see more integrated approaches so that it can tackle these issues. Because if we have communities like this in 10 years' time, I'm going to be very disappointed, right? Because it's just it's so limiting. And that's not a dig at that. It's not a dig at Etsy at all. It's just like understanding like the tech that's available to us as kind of community builders. It's hard to work with, and we're seriously limited in what we could do. But like if we could work towards more integrated in products, then we could tackle these issues that we're talking about.
Yeah, it is so hodgepodge together. Like even the best communities that we dissect are still so limited in their abilities. And even like I was thinking one very specific example of that is like so Teams is like within Khoros, and it's like within a forum type of structure. But Teams also, like these smaller groups, seems like a fabulous place where you would start having like local events or local meetups. But there's like zero, like we saw when I searched meetup, it was like a post being like, anyone want to meet up? Like 10 years ago? It's like, there's such a big opportunity for all of the different elements of a community ecosystem to talk to each other. But right now it's because of the state of the tools and the platforms, there's really such limited traffic between the two. There's no connection between the synapses. It's all just siloed, and makes it hard to create a really thriving ecosystem because everything is just siloed off and it's in distinct areas.
Well, I think to both of your points, it really gets down to, the community industry maturing to the point where, if these are all so siloed, I mean, that's the thing that community is supposed to break down, right? It's supposed to bring everybody together, and all stakeholders within an organization should see and feel and know of the power that community is having, impact that the community is having on what their business objectives are. And so, when you have this disjointed thing, I mean, I can only imagine that, what it would be like to try and pull all these data points from all these different platforms together. I know it can be done, and I know they're a big company, so they might be doing it. But my guess is that there's not one community person responsible for tying this all together and letting all the inner departments know the impact of it.
Yeah, that's it's so funny when you come into these community dissections, how you can kind of start to get the impressions of what the team structure is. You start to kind of figure it out. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Any final insights or takeaways from this community?
Nothing from you, Rosie?
Okay.
No, I'm trying to think, but no, it's been good to have a dig around. But yeah, it's complicated. I think this shows how complicated community gets and how it's really hard to stitch everything together. And so you can easily add a podcast, add Instagram, add this, add that, and it just gets super, super complicated. So I guess like a lesson to be learned is like try not to keep adding as much as it's tempting. it's so tempting to keep adding more, but maybe, you know, try not to do that.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead,
ahead,
Tim.
Bri. No,
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say that the one thing that, you know, just right off of that point, Rosie, is like, you know, I go back to what I said originally is like, there's got to be something in the community that's exclusive that you can't get elsewhere. And so if you're not providing that value, people can go elsewhere and get it. Why are they going to come to your community? And so I know this is one of the things after you had me on the last time, Bri, I kind of got it. It's like we're looking at the public facing and not the private one. But I do think that this public facing one really needs to deliver what that is that these members would get if they join the community. I mean, truly not just the public overarching one, but the one that they can get behind kind of the gated wall. What are they going to be getting from doing that?
Yes. And it can be as simple as what they get is recognition of their journey of like, and kind of journey of mastery within the community. It can be, you know, join so that you can like become a leader in this space. It can be literally as simple as that. But easier said than done, as always. So I always like to say at the end, for anyone on the Etsy team who's watching, I hope you take this with the spirit of curiosity and generosity that is intended. We as community builders know just how hard it is to foster and build these spaces. So take any critique with a good grain of salt, because we know that we can't see all of the inner workings behind the scenes. I know my takeaway is like the community pruning season. I want to kind of roll with that. I think having a season where we're pruning and condensing and simplifying is, especially for communities that are more than 3 years old, I think is something that should occur to help simplify and make the process easier. The leadership journey that you were talking about, Tim, is a big takeaway, and Rosie, what you were saying about just limitation of tools. But, you know, I would love and challenge community teams like the Etsy community team, who like probably have more resources than most community company teams. Like, you can become a leader, and you can become kind of at the forefront of creating these new community experiences and platforms, especially if they're integrated into the actual product and website. So hopefully in 10 years, we can look back and say, hey, Etsy and or XYZ brands took the first steps to doing that, and we're all better because of it. All right, thank you all so much. Thank you for joining, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you.